Hello there and welcome to your daily painting show, the Daily Yupari. I am Yupari. I'm going to be guiding you through the entire development involved in creating each and every one of these paintings that are going to be featured in this show. Now, the way that I'm going to break these videos apart is going to be, painting maybe a 30-minute video, 45-minute video, or whatever, segments each and every day. So you're going to be receiving painting footage along with instruction, guidance, and also, it's not really about do this, do that. Step 1, block in. Step 2, mask in. Step 3, color in, or whatever. It's not going to be like that. It's a much more interactive show. I really want this to add to your everyday life. That is what my mission here is about, bringing the experience of painting to you. That being said, now let's get into some more specificity into this painting. So what I'm going to do here is give you a little recap on what's going on with the color palette and the color value web that we have here. So again, I have quite a lot more colors. If you missed yesterday's video, it's okay. Yes, we have 16 colors. Hopefully I can count properly. I struggle with that sometimes. So we have a very, very extended color palette. I'll be reading out the color mixtures to you as I paint. But if you want to know exactly what materials I'm using, what colors and all of that information will be typed up in the description box down below for you. So let's talk about the color value web. So we have pretty much our darker darks, our middle tones, and then our lightest lights in here. And we have designated brushes for each segment of the color value web. So in the lighter region, we're going to be using the more of the yellows, so the yellow ochre and the cadmium yellow medium. This is cadmium yellow deep. This is cadmium yellow medium, so a little bit more of the cadmium yellow medium in the lighter region of the palette, and using titanium white. And what I'm doing right now is I'm recharging the color value palette. And so as we taper off downwards, now this is kind of like the forehead area that's more high lit. Now as we move down, we're going to have kind of some rosy colors, cheek colors. So Peryline Red, we're going to use Peryline Red and some the Flake white into the mixture. This is just fun, really. Just mixing paint. The physicality of mixing paint, is that even a word? Just mixing paint physically is just very appealing. So now we're going to move on further down, and it's going to get a little bit more reddish, and then it's going to neutral. It's going to get more neutral towards your neutral flesh tones. That is going to be our indicator to switch into our darker colors. So the sap green, Peryline Red, Peryline Red, and cadmium green. Peryline Red, cadmium green are two colors that actually go together pretty well, just like sap green and Alizarin permanent. Alizarin crimson permanent. So what we want are some nice and simple earthy tones. Let's use the ultramarine blue just to cool off the heat a little bit. There we go. That's a nice cooling, adds a nice cooling property. And so now what I'm going to do is, off camera here, I'm going to get the background brush. So here we are back in the shot. So with the background brush, I'm going to go ahead and mix up the background color, which was with the Peryline Red, Alizarin crimson permanent, a little bit of burnt umber, and pretty much just that. And I'm going to want to have this background color juxtaposed right next to the entire color value web. See that? Just so I can have a contrast on the palette. I'm going to put this brush away now. Alright, so now returning to the color value web. Now what's left are the darker darks. So again, I'm going to use this brush. This is our shadow brush, basically burnt umber, sap green, a little bit of cadmium orange, and we're good to go. And so now, what we're going to do for today's video, so for today's segment of the portrait painting, I think we're going to still stick with the head. Now, yesterday we added in those larger structures for the head, and we even drew in some little diagrams for the construction of the basic planes of the head, and explained a little bit of the the planes and the angles between them, which we use the word vector to describe certain angles because they do have direction and magnitude. But so now what we're going to do is we're going to go right back into those larger structures, and we're going to just further refine each one of those shapes now. And now what we're going to do is we're going to continue to add in more specificity. So here we have another dark shape here for the concavity of the eye socket. And again, In yesterday's video, I did draw out a little bit of a diagram for these large planes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to work with these large planes. And the way I'm going to address this painting is I'm going to be constructing it via plane and giving each little transition. Now see how we're working our way out from the concavity of the eye socket. As we work our way towards the eyes, you know, I'm not going to start painting in eyes yet. We're going to get into that kind of specificity later, but for now, what we're looking at is the entire structure of the eye socket, because that is basically housing the shape of the eye. So that's basically housing the eyes. What we want is you know, to make sure once we get into painting the eyes, we want to put them in the relative correct position. And the way to do that without having to measure all the time is through this kind of construction with plane. So now it's a little bit more cobalt teal. I'm pushing it a little bit cooler. And again, we're in the middle tone region of the palette. I think I did just switch brushes by accident. So yeah, that's one thing I tend to do. I organize my brushes based on their values. So I have a light brush, a middle tone brush, and a dark brush, but I just mixed up the dark and the middle tone, but that's all right. So we're now looking at these very specific planes, and we're going to see if we can push this painting towards a more realistic realm. We're going to make this more realistic, basically. And the way we're going to do that is through observing each and every one of these planes in a very simple and easy type of manner. You know, I'll let you in on a little secret here, just between you and me. Who cares where the features are placed right now at this stage? What? Exactly. Strange, right? It's a strange way to think about it. But, you know, the more and more I create these paintings, the more and more I start to factor out things that I consider useless at a current stage. Everything is important and relative at the correct time when it comes to creating the painting. Right now, we're at a very basic stage, so we're looking at basically what we see when we blur our eyes at the model. Squint to see value, open your eyes to see color. And right now, we're blurring our eyes just to get these very simple color transitions. So again, a little bit darker here because that's where the eyelid will eventually fit. Now this is a very freeing way to work because again, my little secret here, little secret that's just between you and me, is that it doesn't matter where the features are placed yet. What matters is the underlying structure, the large architecture involved in creating this painting. And remember, I'm reading your comments now, so if you want to have one of your questions addressed in one of these videos, you don't have to do anything special. I did get a question, and I did make a post-it note, which I'm going to read soon, that pertains to the placement of the features, and in particular, the thirds. So let's just get into it. And remember, I'm reading these post-it notes, I'm studying them, and I'm paraphrasing them. So Verna Wilson, you asked, do I use thirds to help place the features? So for those of you that are curious about what the thirds means, let's bring back the calipers that I used to use. I mean, I'll still use it once in a while, but this is what she means by the thirds. So the forehead to the eyebrows is roughly a third. The eyebrows to the nose is roughly another third. Nose down to the chin is another third. See how close we are to the thirds, even though the model's head is tilted in perspective. Without measuring, as you recall, we didn't really measure, and we're not measuring. Without measuring, we're actually getting the specificity. We're getting the proportions automatically. We're not really worrying about, oh, is the nose in the wrong spot, or oh, you know, are the eyes not correct? No, none of that. We're not worried about that. There's going to come a time where we want to, you know, solidify exactly where that eye is going to fit. But right now, it's not that time. We're not there yet. Everything at its own time. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to present you with a technique that allows you to paint a little bit more free. I want you to be free. I want you to enjoy the process. I don't want you to dwell. I don't want you to linger in the fear of not getting the likeness. And so now we're going to transition into a little more of the cadmium yellow, titanium white mixture that you saw earlier. So that fear of likeness, that fear of, people laughing at our portraits like, oh, that looks nothing like the model. What are you doing there? Forget about it. Just forget it. Take that out of your head. It doesn't matter if the painting looks like the model at this stage, and you can even go so far as saying, well, the model is just there for reference. The photo reference is just there for reference, unless you're working on a commissioned portrait, of course. The likeness is not that important. You want to let the likeness come to you. You don't want to overwork the painting to try to get the likeness. And if you do that, you don't want to sacrifice, as my teacher Paul in Hamilton would say, something along these lines. You don't want to sacrifice the painting for the likeness. Remember, always remember, it's a painting. Now, with the nose, that being said, I do want to focus on the shapes, and the way that the proportions will arise eventually is in the understanding of the shapes in large relations. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to start to sharpen this corner. I'm actually going to throw in a little bit of Cobalt Teal, into that area. And that's how we're going to continue to build these shapes. And a little bit from the darker dark, we're going to throw in the accent for where the nostril may or may not fit. Throw in a brush stroke. So throw in a brush stroke, stand back, and see how that works. You want to see how each shape that you're adding works at a distance. You don't want to dwell on any one little thing just yet. So now what I'm seeing as I stand back, I see that the image is starting to emerge. Now, what's important though is to get those flesh tones, those large shapes, a little bit more descriptive to the model, a little bit less in the orangey realm. So what we're going to do now to get out of that orangey realm with the middle tone brush, we're going to use our Alizarin permanent and our Peryline and our Cobalt Teal. Yes, Cobalt Teal, Peryline, and Alizarin mixed into this area of the palette will actually put in a nice flesh tone. So we just throw in a little bit more of the Neo Megilp medium. So contrary to what you would think, complementary colors are actually very useful for flesh tone. A little bit more Peryline Red. And I do have quite a lot of color on the palette, so you may be wondering what I'm going to do after I'm done with the painting session. That is, whichever video it's going to be, that I let this painting dry for the next layer. What I do is I actually, I will clean off the mixing space, of course, combine all of the paint in here, and then, use that later on to tone canvases or whatever. But I actually put the paint in the freezer. This palette, I will be putting it in the freezer. Alright, so now that we're kind of steering away from that kind of orangey realm of things, we're going to use the light brush again and just kind of marry these shapes to one another. And we're still going to continue to work on these subtle transitions of tone. It's just now they're going to be even more close to one another. And this is the area in particular that I was concerned with. And remember, we did a structural diagram for these value transitions in particular. And also, let's just drop the value down again ever so slightly. Maybe that's not slight enough, but also this area here, that whole thing there, is going to be yet another plane change. And I think we talked about that also last time. So remember, this is a daily painting show. I will be presenting you with footage every single day. Now, it's not a promise. Life happens. Sometimes, you know, I don't know, things happen, computers explode or whatever, and I will have to miss certain days, but I'm going to do my best to provide you with painting footage every single day. Remember, tomorrow's never a promise today. I don't know who said that, but tomorrow's never a promise today. But what I can tell you is I will do the best that I can to continue to upload and continue this show. Because that's what I want it to be. I want it to be a show. I want to have my own film crew and everything. I want this to be more about just how to do something. So now you're starting to see much more subtlety among those shapes. And I'm going to have to I'm going to have to put in much more subtlety into this area here. It's a little more flake white, or maybe a lot more flake white. It's all starting to build. And then when we get into the features, I'll probably do diagrams now for each one of these features, just so I can describe the planes in much more depth. And again, that plane, as we talked about yesterday, let's fix the autofocus. All right, autofocus is fixed. Okay, anyway, that plane that we're painting in, we talked about yesterday, it's very important to get this edge, because this is actually kind of important to differentiating the nasal bone from the concavity of the eye socket. It's very important that I get this plane correct. And again, the concavity of the eye socket, value change right here. Even darker over here. See how we're starting to create that illusion of the plane turning under. And now with the light brush, with a little bit more red, probably more cadmium red. No, let's make it darker. A little bit darker. Still using the light brush with Peryline Red. Now we're starting to put in this shape. Might be too red, and we want to relate that red to the background. And I have the camera pretty close to front and center. I'm actually painting like behind the camera there. So trying to provide you with a very close shot. But what that does is it creates the glare. So now we're going to look at the structure of the eye socket. So again, this shape is turning away from the light. So it's getting darker. See how that, just putting in that dark is really helping to construct that structure. Again, we're relating all of these shapes to one another. So again, I may have to come back in with the dark brush for the hair eventually. Not yet. But let's use it for the eyebrows actually. Burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and pretty much just that right now. Maybe we want it to be cooler. So a little bit more cobalt teal. That's giving us that very distinct shape. So I will actually use eyebrows to help me draw out the top side of the shape of the eye socket, depending on the model, of course. I mean, if the model has, like, you know, too much whatever this makeup is for the eyebrows, then I won't use it. But in this case, I don't think she had makeup on there. I don't know. I don't think she did, though. So we're safe. Now that I have this dark shape, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of alizarin permanent into it. And now we're going to start to kind of indicate where the tear ducts are going to fit. Just a simple little shape there. Maybe it's too dark. Some sap green. And the back side of the eye. Same thing over here. And this is how we're going to get the proportions and all of that without having to worry too much about measuring. It's just by looking at all of these shapes in relations. So now that I have that in there, I see that I'm missing a little bit of a plane for the forehead, side plane of the forehead. Right around here, we're walking away across the superciliary arch for the forehead. So now it's just getting darker and darker. And now with the mouth, we're going to want to look for the same kind of things. That is, we're going to want to put in more specificity into the shapes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm moving up in the value range. And with a little more of the reds. Now remember, I can't really show you every single, I can't show you all the mixing with this. You know, just because I'm holding the palette and I don't have a camera crew. I will. One day I'll have a camera crew. But just bear with me. I am going to be explaining these mixtures to you as I create them. And again, this is the bottom plane for the orbicularis. Oris. You know, I've heard some people pronounce it obicularis, but the spelling of it has an R. I'm not really an expert in how to pronounce these anatomical things. Can you let me know, is it obicularis oris or orbicularis oris? Because I have a feeling that the R is silent. A lot of people with much more experience than me have been saying obicularis oris, so I don't quite know. Let me know what you think. So now, of course, that shape there is kind of off. So we're going to start to add some more cadmium green and the titanium white into here. Now you're starting to see much more structure starting to emerge. I think that I'm going to go back to the halftone brush. Something actually is glaring at me as I stand back. So I want it to be greener. So before we put in the eyes, we want these planes to be pretty descriptive. And that right there is actually the orbicularis oculi, the structure for the eye. Don't worry, we'll do another little diagram for the eye when we get to it. Gotta be careful not to put too much green. I think I may have put too much green there. But you can see it. You can see how the specificity is starting to emerge, at least within the mask of the face. Now, in particular, this area here, it's going to give me some trouble. I don't think that the photograph is doing these shapes justice. I think this is more, should be cooler. Okay, so that should work. And now there's going to be much more of a plane change down there for the chin. So let's get you back to the palette. Alright, so now that you're back onto the palette, I'm going to tint the middle tone region a bit. Remember, we were kind of, the colors were living in the kind of pinkish area. So now we're going to get a little more cool, like lavenderish. So the Cobalt Teal is actually going to play a very important role in this color. Cobalt Teal is a very nice bluish tinter. So I'll tell you what, we actually have a nice yellowish tinter, which is the Cadmium Yellow Medium. We have a green tinter, so it helps to tint. And we have a blue tinter, so something that tints the color. And the red, which is the Alizarin. Did I already say that? But anyway, we want to have something that's a little bit more neutral and a little bit cooler for the halftone. So I perceive it to be a little bit cooler. So that's why I was tinting that color. So let's see here. I think a little more red. So actually throwing in a little bit of the background color. Remember, we mixed up that background color early on just to relate these shapes. So this is now how it's going to relate, because we're using the background color to tint this area of the portrait. And it's important to work in relations. You know, you can work on one shape if you want, one area of the picture, as long as you relate the areas surrounding that picture. You don't have to work the entire painting all at once. You can. Remember, I'm not going to be someone that tells you must do a certain thing, and I will never, most likely, let me change the, there we go. So I will never tell you, don't do this or don't do that. I think it's important to explore and find out what works for you. But when you find something that works for you, you still should explore, I think. I certainly love to explore technique. Okay, so now the autofocus has been turned off. Sorry about the autofocus again and again, but yeah. Going to revisit this tone, and I'm using the halftone brush, and again I want to make this even more subtle now, just like the diagram that we drew out yesterday. So remember, I'm going to start to draw diagrams for you to try and clarify the more conceptual aspects, the more conceptual information involved in painting. And we're gonna get into another one of those structural drawings pretty soon, once we get into working the features. And again, I think there still needs to be more of a value drop off. I don't know, that might be too green, so background color a little bit. And it is kind of, it did push the shape of the chin down like way too much, but it's okay, we can always get that back. Right now what's important to me is getting that transition of value. So back to the sap green. See that? Easily. We just push that shape back. Gotta be very cautious of the angles though. A little bit more burnt umber. It's a little better. Put in the dark for the hair. Ivory black, alizarin. There you go. Alright, so now, I'll tell you what, now we're going to get into the eyes pretty soon. Just going to soften this edge. Alright, so yeah, now we're going to get into the eyes. Or not. Hold on. I'm gonna just soften this edge. Okay. Yeah, enough of that. Now let's get into the eyes. Alright, so now we're back with the, what did I call this thing? I don't know. The structural drawing board. Structure board. Maybe structure board? I forgot. I named it something last time, but I forgot now. So it's the structural board. I have a dry erase marker. Yes, I'm working on top of glass with the dry erase marker, just so I, saving trees and all that stuff. So for the eyes, now the first thing is the angle. Conceptually, you want to look at the angle. Now the eyes that we're drawing here, maybe it's not this angle. Like that. I think that's the angle. And we're going to focus on, first, let's talk about the orientation. So the orientation of the eyes. So if you imagine two spheres, one here, and it's kind of like, and this is an exaggeration now, but it's kind of like the shish kebab, like a shish kebab, and you have the little shapes within the shish kebab. So if I did this, see, that goes in here, goes out, goes in here, there. So if I did that, then it would look like, these are like little, I don't know, you into ice cream? It's like mochi ice cream, like little pieces of ice cream or whatever. They're balls that are within this angle. And now what you want to do is you want to visualize. So if that's the entire eye, here is the iris on one, iris on the other, tear duct from one eye, tear duct from the other eye. And this way you can orient the eyes. So here's angle for one eye, angle for the other eye. So this would probably be in 3/4. So that would be like the side of the face over there. So now here we have the concavity of the eye socket on one side, the concavity of the eye socket on the other. So this is how you would orient the eyes. This shape here should be reminiscent of this shape here in terms of their the size. Now in our portrait, the nose is being blocked. So you actually won't see the tear duct, and we'll get into that when we get into the painting. You won't actually see the tear duct, so you have to visualize it, and this is how you interpret visual information and avoid copying what you're looking at. Because if you're trying to just copy exactly what is there, you will be missing a lot of stuff. So again, that's going to be the angle. This is going to relate to this, and then we're going to have, what's protecting the upper portion of the eye is going to be the eyelid. So here we're going to have another little shape for the eyelid. But I think I'm going to do another diagram for an individual eye. But this is how you orient the eyes. And remember, the orientation of the eyes just means that the eyes are looking in the same place. Not always the case. Some of us, our eyes are looking in other directions, and that's fine. But now you will know how to orient the eyes. And don't worry, I'll continue to make more structural drawings as I continue on with these paintings. I think it's important to see this stuff drawn out in a much more coherent fashion, as opposed to trying to kind of mishmash it into the actual painting. And don't worry, we'll get back to the actual painting. But again, structure of the eyes. Okay, so we're going to focus on one very large eye. So this is going to be the model's eye, let's say to the right of the screen. So with the eyes, you want to look at the structure of the eye. So the eye structure itself, so this is the concavity of the eye socket all into here. See that little shape? That's the concavity of the eye socket. And then this is going to be the point for the tear duct. That point's going to go up. The back side of the eye is going to be there. So the eye, low portion is going to be here. High portion is going to be there. And so what we want to do is we want to conceptualize the structure for the planes. So the plane. So let's get into that now. So this is going to be the top side of the eye. This is the top, again, the top of the roller coaster. This is the vertex of the curve. And then this is the tear duct. So now we're going to see a little bit of the sclera on one side here, and we're going to see a little bit of the sclera on the other side, right over, sorry, we're going to see a lot of the sclera on this side, not that much on that side. Now again, this drawing is not intended to be pretty, it's not intended to be super accurate, but it's intended to describe information that I probably wouldn't be able to describe as clearly throughout the painting. So again, here's the shape for the concavity of the eye socket. And remember, we're picturing the entire eye. So imagine this is the eyeball itself. Remember we drew that out earlier? And this is the iris. And so now what's going to happen, there's going to be a little fold here for the upper eyelid. See that? That's going to be the fold for the upper eyelid. And then there's going to be a fold here on the bottom for the lower eyelid. And we're going to get into these gradations. We're going to get into these gradations of tone when the time calls for it, but now it's important to look at the planes themselves. So again, now we're going to get into the direction of individual planes. So now let's look at the kind of, this is going to be the middle portion of the eye socket. So this is going to be the top middle portion of the eye socket. I'm using a green marker just so there aren't the same colored lines everywhere. I probably should have a marker that has more ink, but I think you can see it. So now that's going to be one plane, so that's going to be the direction of one plane. And let's look at it in terms of vectors. So this is one vector there, another vector there, and then here. So you can see now, hopefully, you can see that there's starting to be a little bit of a turn. And I really don't think that this marker is doing too well. So let me just do that over. So you're seeing, again, a vector here, here, here. And these vectors represent the angles of the planes. So now another one here, here, and then it will start to turn here. Okay, so imagine it's going down, over, into the eye, then flattening out again. Flat here, top plane of the upper eyelid, turns in, and then we have what some folks have referred to as the tear bag down here. And so another thing to note is that, again, more vectors like here, 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 because the eye is turning. So I know that the image is getting kind of complicated, but you're seeing how all of these shapes are turning. Another important area is going to be the top plane of the eye socket. Don't worry, we'll get into all of this in the painting. So this is going to be the top plane here. This, again, this is a little shape for the concavity of the eye socket. This is a plane that's almost facing you. So the vector here is turning this way. And remember, when you're facing the light more, when you're more perpendicular to the light source, you're receiving much more light. So when we get to it, you'll see that this is why the tear duct, sorry, I bumped into the camera. You'll see why this is why the tear duct will have much more light, because of that vector, the direction. Notice how this one is going to be a little bit less. It's turning away, see that? And then this way. So it's turning over, out, in, just like that. And that's going to be the way that we interpret the structure of the eye socket. And then, of course, the bottom plane is going to go here, and then there's going to be a little bit more shape here for the orbicularis oculi plane here for the lower eyelid, but I think that should be enough. So now we have an idea of how to construct the eye, and almost forgot the back portion of the eye socket. So ran out of space here, but this is the entire eye socket. And this is why we wanted the structure of the entire eye socket first, because then we can fit the eye into the structure of the eye socket. Now that we have the painting back here, I think that it's going to be important to, yeah, I'm just trying to adjust the painting. Anyway, it's going to be important to have separate brushes now for the smaller things. So what we have here, so we have synthetic round brushes, and these are size 1 to size 0 synthetic round brushes that we're going to use for the smaller shapes. So just like we have this larger color value web here, we're going to want another color value web for the eyes. And yeah, I'm kind of running out of room here, so I'm going to go ahead and put it right over here Hopefully it's not glaring too much. So we want black and white. Black and white is essentially going to give us the sclera with the addition of a little bit of flesh tone. Tiny bit of flesh tone. Remember, the sclera, the white of the eye, is not white. It's usually some kind of halftone. Now that we have this, we're going to want sclera high, sclera low. So we're going to want a lighter region for the sclera, a darker region for the sclera. This is the lighter region for the sclera. This is the darker region for the sclera. All right, so now we're going to want a darker area. So probably the, the accents. Accent being where one form meets another form. Here's where I'll sneak in the dioxazine purple into this darker accent. Burnt umber. Don't want to put too much purple around the eye. Again, it'll look like a bruise. And so now, switching to another brush, now we're going to want to have the subtle flesh tones. So the red, yellow ochre, cadmium green, burnt umber. And we'll still take from here, so from these colors, so not necessarily, we don't need to have this one here, but I thought it might as well. And then here we'll be able to tint it if we want it to be more red. We'll just use some of the background color. So that's how we'll be able to adjust all of these colors. So just like you saw me mixing up that value, so now you're in close-up, so my camera did just shut off for a second, so this brush stroke was added and then I noticed the camera shut off. Anyway, so just like you saw me mixing before, just to explain, there's a brush mark that didn't get captured on footage. I'm just trying to explain this little shape here. So I'm going for the largest plane that I can see right away, and it's that. So it's for the eyelid, the upper eyelid, so it's tapering away even more. See how we're sculpting out these forms from the inside out? And then again, it's going to get even darker around here, so we're very much working like a sculptor would. Just sculpting out each one of these shapes. And again, that's why I was drawing those vectors in the directional drawing. So hopefully the autofocus is okay. Yeah, okay. Sometimes I have to double check the autofocus. But anyway, that's why I was drawing those vectors going in that direction. It'd be pretty hard to draw those arrows on the painting. So that's why I'm putting in those little structural drawings. So that being said, now the concavity of the eye socket is the next larger shape that I'm noticing. And it's going right about here. So in a way now we're working towards the more specific shapes now. And this is the part of the painting that will probably get kind of slow, just because, I'm going into smaller shapes now. I notice a lot of folks are watching. I hear that you're watching while you're painting, so you like to listen to me on the background, in the background. So tell you what, if you're getting into small shapes like these, stand back. So if you're painting and you're listening to me right now, stand back. Keep standing back. Always look at the painting from a distance. All right, so it's going to get even darker around the side. Right over here. So I think putting in the structure for the eye is probably going to be the last, or hopefully we can get into both eyes, but I think that's going to be the last thing we'll do for this segment. And then next time we'll get into the nose and the mouth. So now let's go ahead and look at the white of the eye, the sclera. Actually, hold on. Let's put in the iris first. I forgot to mix something up for the iris. So I'm going to get a separate brush here. All right, so now we're going to mix up the color for the iris. So the iris is going to be similar to the sclera. It's just going to be a neutral gray. So just ivory black, titanium white, a little bit of ultramarine blue, some sap green, alizarin, peryline, ivory black, cobalt teal, and just about that. Alright, again, quick autofocus check. It is not focusing onto my hand. Alright, we're good. So again, we're working with the larger shapes first. So let's just go ahead and put in something dark for one of the irises. There you go. And we want to put in a little bit more than we need at first. Now the other iris, let's see. Somewhere about like there. I have to be careful of the angle between the eyes because now that angle is going to be kind of a thing. So let's see here. I think this needs to drop a little bit. Just so we get that perspective line like this. Alright, so now we're going to go in with the sclera light. So sclera light will go here. And it's nice to mix it right on top of the flesh tone because it will help to bring down the blueness of the color. Sclera light here, tiny. Almost don't even see it. Okay, so now with the darker brush, the brush that we used for the brush we put that little bit of purple in, I'm getting tired. Let's start to put in the darker shapes now. So how about we start off with the top portion of the eye first. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to get back into the flesh tone brush. I already see a little drawing thing that I can adjust first. That has to get smaller because I had the eyes a little too big. But again, I did say it's okay to put in a little bit more than you need, so it's all good. So now, with that darker brush, let's look for the boundary for the accent. Remember those vectors going out, 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 in, out again. Now that is too red, so I'm going to put some sap green into that. So a little better. This needs to curve in. And remember, just like I said in the drawing, the technical drawing, the nose is going to cover a little bit here. So the nose is covering some of the shapes that we would see for the white of the eye in this area. And now with a separate brush with some of the flesh tone, I do need to push that shape, now that I'm talking about it, a little further out. See how that's starting to get even more specific now? Now let's go in with a little more alizarin permanent for the tear duct. And we want to think of the tear duct as an indicator for the angle between. See, I'll use even my shadow. See that? That's just the shadow of the brush, giving us that angle. Imagine the little shish kebab that I was drawing earlier. I think I'm starting to get hungry. Shish kebab. Anyone having shish kebab for lunch or dinner? Comment down below. Alright, so now we're starting to put in those little darker shapes for the, basically the eyelashes. So down here. Just using that color that I already mixed up before. Remember, this is the top of the curve. then it starts to taper down. And that easy, we can start to see the eye emerging. A little bit more dark over here. I think it needs to be a little cooler, so ivory black. While we have that, let's go ahead and put in the pupil. Right over here. So one pupil there. Another pupil here. All right, so now I really want to be specific with the planes, and this is the smallest brush that I have, so I'm going to have to use it for multiple purposes now. So the bottom plane of the lower eyelid has to be described now to further describe the volume. See that? That's going to now give volume to the bottom of the eye. And I think I'm missing sclera dark, so let's see if I can put in sclera dark. So the dark of the sclera, that is. I don't know, even the tiniest glimpse there. I did just go over the iris a little bit, but that's okay, because the iris itself has a, I don't know what it is, it's an outline. Maybe some ultramarine blue will help with that. It does have a little bit of a line. I don't know what that is. Okay, so now again we're going to strengthen the concavity of the eye socket. There's a little more dark here. Just like so. And again, I keep missing this dark here. And again, it's important not to dwell. It's important not to, you know, don't take it to heart if the shapes aren't looking exactly like the model. Whether you've spent an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever. You know, there are certain instances, a certain kind of magical brush strokes where things start to work. And you got to build them. And I think that's fun. It wouldn't be so fun if it always worked out, would it? Maybe it would. I don't know. So again, I'm just pushing this darker value. And now remember, I did say that there would be a top plane to the cheekbone, but before I get to that, gotta keep softening these edges. Okay, so there is going to be a top plane to the cheekbone. I'm going to have to use that smaller brush. So this brush is now serving multiple purposes. See that? Now we're going to have a top plane to the cheekbone. And after standing back, it could be that this eye is too big, or that shape for the nose needs to come out more. Might be a little bit of both, however. And now that I stand further away, yep, I'm going to have to use this for the sclera. Sclera light. A little more of the sclera showing there. Same brush. Gonna have to go to the store soon. Get more of these brushes. So cadmium green. Light shape all into here. And then with the same brush, again, the eyelash. Very important for the likeness of this model, I think. It's those dark eyelashes. Same brush. I'm going to clean it off with the mineral spirits a little bit. We're going to use sclera light with a little bit of titanium white. Going to add in a highlight there. We're going to do the same thing. Over there. And now, even though we can't see it, there is still going to be a little bit of a darker shape down here for the lower eyelid. And then, of course, we want to look at the contour. Adding more specificity to that contour. And you really want to own your technique. You want to own the technique and the materials. You don't want to have to struggle with paint handling. So for instance, much to counter what I was saying, I had too much medium on my brush. So Flake White, Sap Green, Alizarin Permanent, to the rescue. And so now it's a little more of a descriptive shape there for the concavity of the eye socket. Almost done with today's segment, today's video. Shouldn't call them segments with today's episode. Let's call them episodes with today's episode. It's going to get even darker. And I'm doing the best that I can to show you every single brush stroke. So some of this would be considered noodling. And noodling is when you go over the same shape so many times. But you'll find that that's just part of the process. Not everything is going to come into place first try every time. It's going to be for the curvature of the eye socket. And again, I'm using this smaller brush now. And I'm handling the paint just like I would if it was a pencil drawing. You think of mass, so mass and line. Mass and line for me do the same thing. They are the same thing for me. So a mass is just basically like this right here. See that? A large area of value, but that large area of value, you can sculpt it and add a direction to it. So in a sense, without having to, fill in everything, see how we're building everything. And I think it's just, I don't know, it's much more fun sometimes to just build it in this way. Yeah, this portion of the video is getting pretty long, so I am going to have to cut it very soon. And we'll transition into tomorrow's video. So again, this is a mass, and see how we're steering it specific? We're steering specific now. A little bit more flesh tone. Adding a little more light there. Alright, next thing we'll do, flesh tone dark, even though we don't see it. Remember, we drew it out in the conceptual drawing. So flesh tone dark over, sorry, sclera dark, we're making it darker over here. Not because it's super evident in the picture, but because we know, conceptually now, that these vectors are turning away right there. And one thing I forgot to mention, I think, in the technical drawing is the this little band here for the upper eyelid. I mean this portion here, because it's starting to go turn, 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 get darker, turn, 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 get lighter down there. I think today's segment's going to be extra long. I could do this all day. It's important to do what you love in life. I'm going to ramble a little bit, but if you're watching it till this point in the video, then you're probably interested in my rambling, but I'm going to ramble a little bit as I put in these shapes. It's important to find what you want to do in life. Once you've found it, do it. Do the best you can to do it every single day, or at least as close to every single day as possible. I think one of the most difficult things in life is to find out, to figure out what you enjoy doing. You know, this is something I'd be doing even if I wasn't on camera, even if this wasn't what I did, work-wise, I would still be painting. Maybe not as much, but never mind, just rambling. Just what I want to say is find out what you love to do. Once you figure out what you love to do, find a way to do it every single day or as often as possible. And now it's just really down to some like expert noodling. So we're trying to noodle our way into the final shapes for the eyes. See how we're steering specific with that mass? Gonna just soften this edge a little bit. While I'm at it, probably add some more red down here. This is definitely an extended clip. This should probably be an episode all on its own. Sorry about that. This is our time together. I really do consider you sitting there. You are very much a part of this show. Alright, so that ought to do it for this extended clip, very long clip. And with that, I think that just about concludes today's episode. So that being said, remember, this is now a daily painting show. I'm afraid to make it official because I don't know. I fear any kind of like solid change. That's why I don't have any tattoos or something. Though I kind of did want one at some point. But anyway, enough of my rambling. That being said, I really hope that today's episode helps you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork. And as always, I'll be back again with another episode tomorrow. But tomorrow's never a promise. But very likely, most likely, I will be back again with another episode in another 24 hours. And remember, I'm starting to create this entire collector's gallery. I know that some of the paintings are kind of tilted and but I'm trying to, and I will create the collector's gallery along with my girlfriend Lucy. We are going to create the Patreon account so that this this daily painting show can be funded. You will be part of this experience, part of this daily show, and eventually I do want to, upgrade all of my equipment, get myself in a studio with some ventilation and, my own studio, and to be able to have models sitting there from life. That's really what I'm trying to work towards. And, have a camera crew at some point in the future. So that being said, a way you can help with this cause, a way you can help with this daily show is to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Yeah, I have still, to this day, I've never said that, but please, if you're watching these videos and you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe to me, please. The red button with the play on it, the subscribe button. Please help me get to the 30,000 point in the subscriber count. That would really help me out a lot. And in the future, once that Patreon is launched, you will be able to have the opportunity to own one of these paintings of your very own. It will be called a collector's gallery. But not only that, I will offer some more information and some more stuff. I will be offering more stuff in the Patreon, but I'll announce it in a more coherent fashion later on. That being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll be back again with the next episode tomorrow.